Hi everyone, I'm Chris Miller, Interim Chief Executive Officer of the SEC. The SEC is back, in case you hadn't heard already. I'm really excited to be hosting this, the first of our Power Up sessions. Thank you very much for giving us your time this evening. We have some terrific expert speakers with us tonight and some great information to share, and I know you'll take something useful away from this session. Before we get into it, I'd just like to acknowledge that we meet on Aboriginal land. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the various lands from which we are all gathering today. I'm joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We honour and pay respects to their elders, past and present, and also acknowledge and extend special welcome to any First Nations people that are joining us on the call this evening. The SEC is doing its work in a really important time in Victoria, a time of truth-telling and treaty-making with Aboriginal Victorians. And in that context, we're committed to self-determination, meaningfully partnering with Victorians' First Nations peoples and ensuring that they're able to share in the benefits of this huge, historic energy transition. In this first Power Up session, we will show you how you can save money on your household energy bills and the simple things you can do right now to make a difference. By the end of this session, I hope you will see that, one, switching to electric is not as hard as you might think. Two, you can go electric one step at a time, at your own pace, to suit your own lifestyle and budget. And finally, there are some really easy things you can do right now to reduce your bills and be part of the transition. I'll just run you through the lineup for the hour we have with you this evening. We're delighted that the Honourable Lily D'Ambrosio, Minister for the State Electricity Commission, will officially open our event with a special video message. I will then share a bit more about the SEC's particular role in supporting Victorian homes to go electric. You'll then hear from our two expert presenters. One of the important roles for the SEC is amplifying and coordinating with those doing great things to drive the transition to renewables. And we've got two great partners with us tonight. Dan Cass will discuss the how and why of going electric and where to start, a topic he's very well qualified to speak on. Dan is the co-founder and the executive director at Rewiring Australia, a non-profit independent organisation on a mission to electrify everything and power it with clean, renewable energy. They research, advocate and demonstrate how going electric will drastically cut Australia's carbon emissions and create an energy system that is more efficient, affordable and fair. Sophie Wright joins us and will share practical tips to save energy and money at home. Sophie's the CEO and founder of Geelong-based company Electrify Victoria, and she has years of experience in solar design, sales and business operations. Sophie's passionate about bringing renewable energy designs to Victorian homes and businesses. We'll take a virtual tour of an all-electric house with Melbourne homeowner Terry Teo, who's made the switch to all-electric. And towards the end of the hour, we will have a Q&A session moderated by my colleague Tess Hughes, the Executive General Manager of Corporate Affairs here at SEC. We strongly encourage you to submit your questions, and you can submit your questions at any time addressed to any of our speakers throughout the session. If you're able to scan the QR code that appears on your screen in a moment, or visit slido.com and enter the code hashtag SEC0724. It should be on your screen right now. We'll do our best to get to as many of those questions as we can. Let me speak briefly about the role of the SEC. The energy transition is on, and it's actually well underway. This is not some theoretical project that's ahead of us. Our electricity system in Victoria is at around 40% renewable energies right now. But we've got more work to do. Victoria has committed to a target of 95% renewable by 2035. And the SEC is here to help accelerate the transition and help overcome some of the speed bumps along the way. We're investing an initial $1 billion in bringing on new large-scale generation and storage assets. But we know that households will really be at the heart of this transition. In fact, households have been leading the way. for the past many years with Victoria and Australia's high uptake of rooftop solar, which is really the envy of the world, that rate of uptake. As the ministers said, by participating in this session and learning a bit more about how to make the switch, you're continuing to do your bit and drive the transition that's ahead of us. Electrifying our homes really is now a thing. It's a real thing, and more Victorians are voting with their feet and switching their homes from gas to electric. We as households are replacing gas appliances with electric, and in some cases adding solar, and in some cases adding batteries as well to our homes. We're switching off gas and reducing our household emissions. And each and every household that does this is helping Victoria achieve its overall targets, helping us move towards net zero as a state and as a country, but also making a smart decision for their own homes and their families. As the Minister said, electric homes are cheaper to run, healthier and more comfortable to live in, and better for the planet. And we know that people save money by switching from gas to electric, even more by adding solar to their homes. And it's actually easier than you might think. And this is where the SEC can help. We're developing simple and practical solutions to help you understand your home energy use and profile and make the switch to electric. We'll guide you through switching to electric at a pace that's right for you. We're currently testing a new digital platform with users that helps those users and households plan to make the switch and take the guesswork out of it. The platform that we're testing creates a personalised plan for a household to help it reduce its energy bills and get the best value for money. And it helps doing so by calculating government rebates that are available, the return on investment that flows from those investments, and the emissions reductions that flow from the switch. But the planner is really just the first step in developing what we aim to be an SEC one-stop shop solution that helps Victorians cut their bills by going electric. And you'll hear a bit more about that in the coming months. But in the meantime, let me hand over to Dan Cass, who will talk about the how and why of going electric. Over to you, Dan.
Great, thank you, Chris, and thank you, SEC, for having Rewiring Australia here. And that one-stop shop will be an amazing resource for Victorians, so congratulations for all you're already doing. I helped Saul Griffith start Rewiring Australia in 2021, and in fact, Minister D'Ambrosio launched our first paper, Castles and Cars. Anyone who's an energy nerd is welcome to download. It's over 100 pages. There'll be a test afterwards. And for those who don't, we'll summarise some of the key points now. But it is true that households are at the core of the energy transition and really are the climate heroes in a country that sometimes has had a slightly fractious and occasionally misinformed debate about the benefits of climate action. Households have just gone forwards regardless, and well over 3 million households around the country have invested their own hard-earned in solar, and it just keeps going. See if I can now get a slide up as well. Here we go. So this is the first big finding from our research paper, Castles and Cars. If you look at the bar on the left, the average, and this is the average, so obviously there's a long tail on either side, but this is the Australian average. The average Australian household uses about 102 kilowatt hours a day. Doesn't matter exactly what the kilowatt hours are, but the key is if you electrify it, to the bar on the right, you would use about 37 kilowatt hours. So think about that. At the moment, you are essentially throwing away 2/3 of the energy you pay for. This is not free. You are paying for this energy, and 2/3 you are throwing it away as pollution, really noise and thermal pollution. At the same time, as we electrify, we will use more electricity, but it is intrinsically efficient compared to the fossil fuel generation and the gas supply on the left side of the graph. So it's truly extraordinary what Australians can achieve, and I think we will go from being the leading solar nation in the world to being the leading electrification nation, particularly because of agencies like Solar Victoria and SEC. So this chart shows roughly the savings on average. On the left, gas and petrol home spending about $5,500 a year. You'll see petrol bills are the biggest part of that, but in Victoria we have a lot of gas. Historically, gas bills are a huge part of everyday Australians' annual energy costs. When you move over to electric and solar and maximum solar on the roof and an EV, you can slash bills by, in the realm, as the Minister said, thousands a year. Again, it varies depending on the household and the circumstances, but roughly speaking, these proportions are right across the country, and it's a huge incentive for Australians to get healthier homes and do something better for the planet. Now, on the next few slides, we're looking at the running costs only, so this doesn't include the capital expenditure of buying the machines, and of course, the installation costs can vary enormously depending on where you are, and we'll get to that later. But this, I think, is really stunning for water heaters. If you're using gas instant, which is pretty common in this state and in others, so the second grey bar, you're spending in the realm of $5,000 over 15 years on gas. And of course, that price is only likely to go up. You know, the gas companies want to send all the gas overseas, and as we saw when the war started in Ukraine, a global energy crisis can be just around the corner. You then look at the orange bars and you can see even just an old-fashioned electric hot water heater, it's called a resistance heater, it can save you straight away in the realm of 20%. If you go right across to the right and you get solar heat pump powered hot water, you can be saving 50, 60, 70, 80% against the costs that you might have in an average household. So next we look at space heaters. So this comparison is heat pumps, so split systems people often call them, which of course are a free air conditioner that comes with your heater, so it's a pretty good 2-for-1. Again, if you look right across to the right, a reverse cycle AC with solar, and the 30% means drawing on your own rooftop solar about 30% of the time that you're heating. That might be about right, heating a bit during the day in the cold of Melbourne winter and then relying on grid power during the night. You're still saving thousands and thousands of dollars against, for example, inefficient electric bar radiators or relying on gas heating. And of course, the benefits of electric are you're not burning a fossil fuel in or near your house, which is good for you, your pets and your children. The last big saver and the biggest emission chunk for an Australian household is, of course, the car. Petrol cars are an incredibly efficient way of buying petrochemicals from a large company and sending most of it up in heat and noise. If you look across to the left, the running costs over 15 years for the average Australian car, something like $39,000, and probably that figure only goes up as you think of the kind of geopolitical insecurity that we're seeing around the world currently. If you move right across to the right-hand bar, an electric vehicle largely charged from solar, and we're seeing data emerging from the OEM, from a charger and EV companies that some people are charging about half the car's petrol tank, as it were, from their rooftop solar. If you're the lucky people doing that, you might bring down your costs into the low thousands for a car that will take you as far as petrol and probably get there safer and quieter. So the running cost savings are really quite incredible. On this chart, we've summarised some of the policy asks that Rewiring Australia is advocating for. So I said in the beginning, we work a lot bottom up from the grassroots with communities, helping them understand how to make this transition and what the benefits are for them and their children and community. But we do a lot of advocacy at the federal and the state level also, talking to politicians and public servants and the parliaments themselves. And our big ask is that we have the federal government step in and help households with that upfront capital cost of electrification. And we compare it to universal education through HECS or universal healthcare through Medicare, which are absolutely baked in Australia. They're part of the social contract here. And we think electrification for the low and medium income households should similarly be something that is just the no-brainer that you're able to do with a bit of help from the federal government, and then of course the fantastic information and enablement that's coming from SEC and other agencies and so on. So yeah, thanks again for having us here, and really looking forward to seeing all those tricky questions on Slido a bit later.
Thanks very much, Dan. Look, two things jump out from your great presentation. The first is just how compelling it is to see those cost savings stack up by category of moving to electric. The second is this ambition of Australia becoming a world-leading electrification nation. What a great ambition to strive for. I've talked about the SEC partnering with plenty of people who are doing amazing things to drive the transition. You're meeting two of them here tonight, but we've also been lucky enough to partner with some individual householders and worked with a gentleman by the name of Terry Teo, who has made the journey from a traditional dual fuel household to being a fully electric household, and he shared some of his experiences with us through this video, which I'm going to play now.
Hi, I'm Terry. Welcome to our energy efficient all-electric home. Come on in. We purchased this lovely double brick wood-in bungalow in 2008. It had old gas connection and old appliances. Difficult to heat, drafty and cold, and difficult to cool in summer. My advice, start with the low-hanging fruit, which you can do at low cost. Sometimes there are things that you can do yourself. Putting in plenty of ceiling insulation. It's an old house with timber floorboards, gone around and gap sealed all the skirting boards. Put honeycomb blinds on the windows, which provide thermal insulation. Our solar system is a 5 kilowatt unit. We also have a battery, which is a small one at 6 kilowatt hours. The job of that battery is simply to save some of the surplus solar that you've made during the day. By having the battery together with the solar, you're maximising your self-consumption of that free solar that you've made during the daytime. As part of the renovation in 2012, we chose to retain our gas connection. We would have been better off going straight to electric because our bill savings would have commenced straight away then. The final step that we took, we replaced the gas heater in the living room with a split system, replaced the hot water system with a heat pump. We converted the gas hob to induction. I certainly had apprehensions whether I would have the same type of style of cooking and to get the same outcome. It has been a wonderful journey going to induction. The heat is powerful, it's responsive, it's controllable, and the results are delicious. I checked our bills recently and we are paying about 80 cents a day for our electricity. That works out to $320 a quarter savings, or around $1,300 a year. An all-electric home is going to be cheaper to run. You will have long-term savings. There are good rebates, so go ahead and do it.
I've just got to say, what a legend. What a clear and compelling case for electrifying your home. Thanks again for devoting your time, Terry, to sharing those learnings with those on the call today. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Sophie Wright and hand over to Sophie to talk about other ways to reduce your energy usage and bills at home. Sophie.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you for having me here today. I've got 6 tips that I want to share with everyone on how you can reduce your energy bills and move through this electrification process as well. And firstly, I think it's really important not to get overwhelmed. There can be a lot of information around, and you can go down a couple of paths. You can engage professionals and ask around and get the advice from those that know. And if you want to find out information yourselves, there's lots of great resources around. So this webinar series, for example, the SEC website, the Solar Victoria website, and some really good resources online. Tim Forsey, the creator of the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook group, has just put out a really great book that can really help guide you and give you a basic understanding on how to move through this process so that you can gear yourself up with information. So make use of those resources and try not to fall down a rabbit hole. Sometimes there's so much information, and I can see customers occasionally get so overwhelmed by lots of different information sources that they give up on that journey because they just feel that it's too much. So seek out professionals, get the basics and guide yourself through the process, but don't get overwhelmed while you're doing that. The second tip is to know your home. Now, last week I did a site visit for a great guy called Steve. Steve contacted me and said that he wanted to put solar on his roof after he received his large electricity bill for winter. So as I do, I organised a site visit to meet with Steve, and I went around to his house. He's got a new double-storey townhouse in Lara, and knocked on the door, introduced myself to Steve, started at the switchboard, which was nice, near the front door, and already I could see that Steve's new townhouse is a double-storey with an open plan stairwell at the front door that leads to a long hallway that is also open plan, going past some bedrooms and an open plan laundry area into another very large open plan living, dining, kitchen space. It was about 55 square metres. So Steve and I walk into the back of the living area to have our conversation about where it is that Steve wants to go. Now, the catalyst for Steve to contact me was this large electricity bill, and his immediate thought is to put solar on his roof. Steve had got 3 other quotes already from various solar companies, and they're quoting him 6 to 8 kilowatt systems. I had a chat with Steve. Steve's story is he's a tradie. He lives alone in this house. He sometimes has his daughter on the weekends. He heads off to work at 7 a.m. in the morning and he comes home at 4 or 5 p.m. at night. And he said, and so I put on that split system now, and it's a 5 kilowatt split system to heat a really large space that opens in this open plan living area through to this hallway that goes the full length of the house and then open up the stairs. Now, as Steve said, it's really warm upstairs. I can't warm downstairs. I said to Steve, solar absolutely at some point is going to help reduce your electricity bill, but right now, how about you put in a door? And Steve said, you know what? I've actually been thinking about doing that. So Steve's solution right now to decrease his electricity bills, and the most immediate effect, is for him to install a door between his open plan living area and his hallway. So Steve will touch base with me after he's done that and we see those bills reduce, and then we can size that solar system appropriately once he's reduced his energy usage. So it's not necessarily the answer you think straight away. Sometimes the solution can be much more cost effective. And if you look at the lifetime savings from Steve putting in a door, that's going to be pretty epic for him. And if you don't know, if you can't work out in your home some of these basic things that can save you money, you can go through the process of getting a scorecard assessment where you have an expert that comes into your home to work out where you can save energy and work out some of these really small things that can help you in that process as well. All right, number 3, and this is one that I could spend a lot of time on. Learn how to read your energy bills and your electricity bills. Now, electricity bills, they come in all different formats, and I look at them every day as part of my role. And even sometimes when I get another electricity bill that comes across my desk, it can take a while to decipher it because they are, I think, probably deliberately confusing in how that information is set out. But if you can learn to read it in a really basic format and know what your energy costs are, then that's going to give you the ability to firstly shop around and secondly to use your energy at different times of the day based on what your tariff is. So if you pull out your energy bill, and your electricity bill is where I'm talking tonight, is on that electricity bill you'll see a daily supply charge, and that will be a rate that's usually around $1 to $1.40, and that's the rate that you will pay to your electricity retailer for the pure joy of being connected to the grid. So knowing what that is and what your daily charge is really important. So take that bit of information and write it down on a bit of paper. Then when you see the calculations of the cost of that electricity bill, you'll see some rates. Now, if you are on a simple flat rate tariff, you'll have one rate there, and it may be something around the 22 cents to 45, 50 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's really important to know what that is, and that tells you how much 1 unit of energy costs you. So write down that figure. You may find more than one rate when you see that calculation of your electricity bill, and this may mean that you're on what we call a time of use tariff. So some households pay different rates based on the time that they use electricity. For example, there's a lot of people that will pay a peak rate between 3 p.m and 9 p.m. Now, for most households, if you think about it, your standard stereotypical house, most people come home from work and school at around 3 or 4 o'clock. They'll start cooking, they'll start heating or cooling their home, they'll start charging their devices. It's where a lot of homes can start using a lot of energy. And if you have a time of use tariff that is higher at that point in time, you can really be hit hard, and that can be costing you a lot of money. So write down that figure and also see if you can find on your electricity bill what time that peak period is. As I said, mostly that will be between 3 and 9 p.m, but that could differ based on your plan and your electricity provider. If you're unsure, give your electricity retailer a call. Ask them what your rates are and know what they are. Comparing them and shopping around for different electricity plans is something that you should be doing all the time as well, and something that is a really easy way to save money. There's the Vic Energy Compare website, which will help and guide you in that basic start of that decision, and then you can really delve into each retailer's offerings. Write them down again on that same piece of paper so that you can compare them, because it can be really hard to compare apples with apples. But it's a really important thing to learn, and this is going to help save you money for a long time to come. Flowing into that, when you've got a time of use tariff, and I mentioned that before, between say 3 and 9 p.m, mine might be as high as say 46 cents compared to an off-peak rate of around 22 cents. So if I'm doing things at those times like running a dishwasher or running a washing machine or a clothes dryer, when I can shift those to a different time of day and it's costing me nearly half to do that, it's a really easy way for me to reduce that bill without making significant changes in my house. You can also do things like setting different devices on timers if you're not at home, and that's going to really help drive that cost and that energy bill down for you without making very many changes at all. Couple that with shopping around for the best electricity plan, and you can really start making some savings that you can put towards some of these larger cost items down the track. Other really simple things that you can do in your home that aren't going to cost a lot of money and perhaps be free as well is simple draft proofing. So, the old snake that was on the doorway, get one of those or create your own with the stocking. It's a great activity for the kids to get involved in, and just make sure that you've got those drafts not coming in. So door jams as well, you can get all of these things from your local hardware store. Closing blinds, so when the evening and it starts to get cooler, making sure that you're closing curtains and blinds earlier to stop that cold air coming in, and meaning that you don't need to use your heaters as much. And same in the summer, closing your blinds to prevent that heat coming into your house. A lot of people in Victoria have gas ducted heating, and some may have split systems, largely put in there to cool a home. So that split system is the most efficient way that you can both cool and heat your home. So if you're in this really fortunate position where you're using your gas ducted heating because you think that's efficient, have a go at switching to using that split system to heat that area of your home, and you'll find a dramatic decrease in your overall energy usage in that house. So give it a go. Make sure that you clean those filters as well. So one of the easiest ways you can increase the efficiency of that unit, you just lift up the top of it, pull out the filters and give them a quick clean, and try and do that every 6 months or so. Same thing in terms of trying to heat a home in winter, and it's been a really cold winter this year. Putting on jumpers when you don't necessarily need to heat a home, thinking about whether you really need to heat a bedroom, or you can add an extra blanket to your bed and get all nice and snuggly underneath the covers in winter. So just some really simple tips, and there's lots in Tim Forsey's book, there's a lot you'll find online and on the SEC website as well, just really simple things to reduce what energy you're using. The fifth tip I have is if you're planning on spending money, do your research. So ask around, find the right installer for you. If you're making some basic phone calls and the company that you're talking to is not answering your questions, they're not going to be answering your questions after they've done their installation. So have that level of comfort where you're working with somebody that you know is going to service you and is going to be there to answer those questions on an ongoing basis, because electrifying your home, as we've heard tonight is an ongoing journey. And for most people, they're not going to do everything straight up front. They'll do things gradually, and your needs might change, and you may need to check back in with that company at different points of time to change things around as well. There are lots of rebates available, and we are really lucky in Victoria to have access to lots of rebate programs. So learn what they are and how you can use them best. And I know that there's going to be an upcoming session on that, so that's going to be a really great one to listen to. Also, is the company that you're talking to going to come out to site? Steve, in the example I gave before, none of the other companies who'd quoted him solar had been to his house. So nobody picked up the fact that he needed a door. They're all quoting based on what they expect his energy usage to be and not looking at ways to reduce that energy. So a site visit can really pick up things that you might not think about and really mean that you get the best solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. And one thing that I'm really passionate about, solar is one of my passion projects and parts that I really love. If you already have a solar system or you're contemplating getting a solar system installed, please make sure that you put on consumption and production monitoring onto that system. A lot of people will install solar and just hope that it's going to reduce their electricity bills without actually knowing what it's doing. So learning what that solar system is generating and learning when your house can use that energy is the most important part of going through that process and installing solar. And a lot of these great apps that do this for solar systems now are really easy to read. The company that you're working with should be guiding you and helping you to learn to read that as well. And that's how you can make the most of the solar system that you're putting on your house or you've already got. I see lots of existing solar systems that unfortunately have been installed without this feature. Know that there are retrofittable solutions to that as well. So solar analytics and catch power, for example, can be retrofitted and then they can provide that information so you can make the most of that system that is already sitting on your roof. So that is my 6 quick tips for how to reduce your electricity bill and start the electrification process. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Sophie. That was really clear and really simple, and I think we've all come away with some homework to do, which is to pull out your energy bills and try and extract that key information about your usage and the tariffs that you're paying. So I'll be pulling my bills out tonight to do exactly that. The other common theme in Sophie's presentation, I think, is trust. And we know that energy and efforts to save energy and costs can be overwhelming, but it's about finding those organisations, suppliers, providers that you can trust. And that's going to be different for everyone. But if you can find that person, there is expertise and reliable information out there in Victoria. It's just about getting access to it and then acting in reliance on that information. So thanks again, Sophie. That's a lot of talking from us. This is now an opportunity to hear from the audience through the Q&A. So I'm going to hand over to Tess to take us through the Q&As.
Great, thanks. Questions? On your screen, there'll shortly be a QR code. And you would have seen this at the start of the session, but you can use your mobile phone to scan in that QR code, or you can go to slido.com and enter hashtag SEC0724 to then pop in your questions. So fire away with those. While you're busy logging in and lining up those questions, I would like to thank everyone who registered with us, and a lot of people put in suggested topics and questions when you did register. Some of those topics and themes have been picked up on today, but we'll also be running a number of sessions, doing little deep dives, as you mentioned. So we'll be doing a session on rebates, we'll do a session on heating and cooling, we'll be doing sessions on solar and all sorts of things, batteries, induction cooking, the list will go on. So you'll be hearing more from us in terms of different sessions. But look, in terms of getting started, while you're getting your questions in, I might just throw a few that have already come in. So many people, and you picked up on this in the overwhelm, Sophie, but I'll ask this one to Dan. So many people are confused about where to start, and it's just that, look, what's the first step I need to take? Would you like to just elaborate a bit more on where do you start?
Sure. And I think the example of Steve, the tradie with the unfortunately cavernous house, is probably a good example. You do need to think about energy, and maybe you do need to get an expert from a solar company or an energy assessor to have a look. I think at Rewiring Australia, we're often saying start with the draft proofing of a house, but beware, it can be a bit addictive. I knew I was possibly being a little over the top when I was saying we need to start, putting the little weird tape sticky stuff around, the sliding door into the pantry, in case the baked beans were a bit cold or something. So you can go a little overboard, but it's incredibly cheap and can have a huge impact on the drafty old house that is, the standard in many suburbs for Australia. I think the other thing that we say is really max out solar early, get as much as you can get by premium equipment, make it ready for storage. If you can't afford a battery immediately, just get a huge solar system, and whatever you do, you're going to be using more electricity as you use less energy because you're electrifying and getting out of the big petrol car energy waste machine that we all tend to have in our garages and on our street, and into an EV. And once you do that, you want as much self-produced, very cheap fuel as you can possibly get.
That's great, thanks, Sarah. And another common question coming through is, technology is moving pretty fast, and what's the risk of things changing? So, for example, with solar PVs or batteries.
Look, we would say jump in now and get going, and it depends on everyone's circumstances, but really there'll be more and more smarts in all these things as we go forward into the future, and all sorts of devices will be orchestrated or become part of virtual power plants where they can all talk, so a kind of Internet of Energy concept and so on, and they're fantastic, but you get most of the benefit from just starting the journey, particularly if you're getting your last gas appliance off out of the building and ending your gas supply, because as you were saying, Sophie, there's a daily charge for electricity. There's a daily charge for gas. And so if you're, for example, just got a gas stove and you're paying the daily charge, which can be, whatever it is, $1 a day or something, you're paying $1 a day over a very small amount of gas consumed. That's a very expensive way to, make your bok choy like Terry was. So if your last appliance is just one heater or one stove, that's probably a very cost-effective next step for you.
Great, thanks, Dan. Sophie, a couple of questions just from those pre-submitted, a lot about installing and installers, and some of the common questions that come through is that they've had a situation where their hot water needs to be replaced, and they're finding that they're getting talked into gas. But could you talk a little bit about, what questions should you be asking your installer to help move in the right direction?
It's a really good one. It's interesting you bring that up, because a lot of the time when I'm talking to customers, I will say to them, when your hot water cylinder dies, because a lot of the time, and what Dan will always say is that replacing these systems once they die is a really good way to move towards electrification. I say to people, do your research now so that you know when your hot water cylinder dies, for example, the path that you want to take. And I always say, remember the conversation with the crazy solar lady. And it's amazing how many people do. But if you prepare yourself with some information now, you will have that when you go to make that decision. Because when hot water goes, it's one of those things that you want to be replaced as soon as possible. You want a hot shower, the kids need to be bathed, it needs to be done quickly. So if you've got a little bit of information you're ready, then great. Don't be scared also, if you're not in that position, to have done the research, to ask questions. And if you feel that you're not getting that answer from the installer you're talking to, ask around. Ask people that you trust for referrals, and do your research before you feel that you're pushed into making a decision. And knowledge is always power, and everyone will have a different right solution to a problem. But if you can arm yourself with information and ask around if you feel a bit unsure, that's going to help guide you.
That's great. Thank you. Just another question on alternatives to gas ducted heating. What would you recommend?
Look, the most efficient way to heat a home is to do wall-hung split systems. And it's quite amazing, just when people think about the areas that they need to heat in a home, what they can really scale down to. You know, the traditional gas ducted where it's heating the whole house, and a lot of them aren't even zoned, where you identify the areas that you spend time in and that you want to heat or cool. A lot of people will say, well, I only really use a couple of rooms, and these are the ones that really I need to be worried about. You know, for example, my home had a gas ducted system in it when we moved in. And now we have 2 split systems in the 2 main living areas, knowing that we don't actually need to heat bedrooms. Like, everyone's really happy in our house to be really snugly in bed. So thinking about what you need, that the wall-hung split systems are great. We do have some people that love the ducted flow of that sort of heat. So ducted split systems will also work in different scenarios for people that want that whole of house solution. But the right solution will be different for everybody and what they like and what they prefer.
That's great, thank you. And Chris, a little bit about the SEC, but how will the SEC help lower energy prices?
Great question. And the SEC will be contributing to that in 2 main ways. So we have a growing portfolio of activities in the large-scale space. So what we're aiming to do is bring online more larger-scale renewable generation assets and storage assets, and the engineering and the economic information tells us that this is by far the lowest cost form of new energy. So as our existing coal generators sort of limp on, become increasingly unreliable and increasingly costly to run, they need to be replaced over time with lower cost renewable assets. The SEC's got a big role to play there in ensuring that that investment in Victoria particularly continues to happen at the right pace and at the right scale. So a big role for the SEC there. But the other really important role for the SEC is at the household level, Tess. And it goes to some of the conversation that we've had tonight, where we think the SEC can be one of the organisations that can provide trusted, reliable information to consumers and help them make decisions at the household level, whether it be as simple as installing a door or choosing to switch appliances. We're trying to address that gap, which is that gap for reliable, trusted information. We're testing a tool at the moment in the market that will help households plan and understand the savings that can flow from switching, but also as we build out that one-stop shop solution, potentially help consumers with other parts of their journey, whether it's connecting with installers, connecting with trusted products, or overcoming some of those cost barriers that we've talked about.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to jump to a question which I know is popular in the pre-registration, but it's come up here too. It's an EV question, so I'm going to throw it to you, Dan, as well. The question is, do I have to have a home charger installed, or can I just plug it into an existing plug?
Great question. So EV chargers come in different levels. The fastest chargers can charge your car the quickest, but the electricity actually costs the most for a variety of reasons. But basically, it's a huge current, and they have to build a big machine that's connected to a strong bit of the grid. So you can't just put it in your driveway and connect it to where your bar fridge was. There's a level 2 charger that's somewhere in the middle, and then the lowest level is really just a power point that trickles the energy in. But here's the really cool thing. Most of the advertising has been around the fast chargers because it's quite amazing. You can park your car and have a coffee and then zoom off again, and you can go from 15% of your petrol tank, your battery, to 80% in 20 minutes or what have you on a really good car. But here's the trick. If you charge from a power point, particularly one powered from your rooftop, that energy is incredibly cheap. So if you compare the cost per unit of energy for Australian rooftop solar to anything else in the world, any other fuel, any other market, it's the cheapest. We've literally got the cheapest energy source in the world on our rooftops. It goes straight from the roof. It doesn't need to go through a big, expensive grid, which we need to have because we need to connect all the large-scale power to it, but it just goes straight through your house, and you don't have to pay rent to a distribution network to get the power there. So really the big energy saving and cost saving hack really for households is get the EV, have, as I said, as much solar as you can get on your roof, and try to charge it at home as much as you can, or even just in your community. And then the sort of virtuous cycle of this is the more local solar we have, beyond what you need to power the households, the more batteries you can plug in your community. The car batteries then become a kind of solar soaker for the community, so that then you can have even more solar later. So you're helping yourself, but you're also helping your whole community quit fossil fuels as fast as we can, which of course we need to do.
Yeah. Sophie, we were talking a little bit before about because you've got an EV,
Yes.
and you had a really good line about the availability of plugging in.
Yes, there's more power points than petrol pumps. So, you know, there's power points. Yes, there's power points everywhere. And it's interesting that there's this fear around charging a car when, you know, for most people, they spend most of their time at night at their homes. Simply driving into your garage and plugging in your car and leaving it to charge is so much simpler than having to drive into a petrol station. And you can really get a full charge at a low rate overnight. And there are even electricity plans that are incentivising people at that time of the day. For myself, for instance, I charge at home off my solar when I can, when I'm working in the home office, but it's not always the way. Most of the time I'm driving around during the day. But there's some really clever plans out there with a really low rate that helps us to shift that time of use that everyone's using power. And there's not a lot of power being used on our grid between midnight and 6 a.m. So there's incentives there for EV owners to charge at different times of the day where you can't, for example, charge for free on solar during the day. So it's a really interesting way to save even more money on your electric vehicle.
Yeah, great. Dan, there's a few questions that come in frequently about people renting and things that they can do, and also, so it's a bit of a double whammy question. There's people renting, but also those in apartments, and maybe they're older style apartments, and any advice you've got for them?
Right. So yeah, renters are the hardest group because they don't own the building. You know, they can't make investments in the asset. You know, you should talk to your landlord about getting these things done. It will put the price up of the property. It'll, you know, add value to the property, and you know, given rebates and so on, it's not a big burden for the property owner. There will need to be, I think, rental standards for to help facilitate electrification and equity as we go through this. And I think state governments will have to sort of come to the party with the federal government and work out a way to sort of spread the burden here, so that renters aren't left behind. Apartment blocks, there are technologies now, including some invented in Australia, that allow an apartment to share solar, literally on the roof and the car park and, you know, other spaces in an apartment block that's got its own, you know, land around the central building, and even solar gardens, essentially, that are little solar farms nearby that the owners can effectively be paying for through their energy bills. These are all really emerging systems, you know, technology and social and policy systems, but they will get better and better as more people move to electrify and move to maxing out solar. But certainly the renter does need to rely on a landlord having some, you know, interest in improving the energy performance of their building.
Can I just add to that? And a plug for some of the work that's being done by the Victorian government more generally, outside the SEC. So the government is now out consulting on proposed minimum energy efficiency standards for rental homes. That's a really important part of the response, I think, to ensure that there are these basic standards expected of those that rent homes to others. But equally, to Dan's point, we know that there is misinformation and misunderstanding amongst many parts of the community, including in respect of landlords and real estate agents that are making or not making these kinds of decisions. And we think the SEC's got a really important role in partnering with those who are making decisions about rented properties, whether it's a landlord, whether it's a real estate agent, to make it clearer and simpler and make the benefits that flow to the owner but also to the renter really simple, and to hook those decision makers up with the supports that Dan's referred to as well.
Right. Dan, you shared some really good data points before on your presentation around cost savings in the home. And there's a question here about which gas appliances will generate the greatest savings to convert to electric.
So start with solar hot water, or even just electric resistive hot water, and that's the sort of biggest first saving you can make. And then heating, and then the last, you know, gas consumption chunk will be the cooking in the kitchen. But, you know, again, like I said, if it's the last machine you have connected to the gas network, it's the one that's effectively incurring this crazy sort of per day charge, which means that energy is incredibly expensive, watt for watt.
Okay, and it's a good segue to this next question, which was when it comes to hot water, is a heat pump as effective as and reliable as gas?
So heat pumps have this kind of amazing phantom energy boost, which is they actually produce more energy benefit than they take to run. So, you know, I'm not the physicist, I can't explain how it works, it's kind of magic, but, you know, you get 2 or 3 times as much energy out as you put in, because the heat pump is essentially moving energy around. It's not generating energy like a coil that heats up because you're pumping a lot of energy through a bit of wire.
With what we see with hot water heat pumps is, and I think it's really important to know that you can change the settings on heat pumps. So you can change that to set up any household to have hot water, and there's a fear that, you know, without instantaneous gas you'll run out of hot water, but knowing that you can change those settings based on what your household does as well. So for example, in my house I've got a hot water heat pump. The main time that we heat the hot water is during the day, so we can do that off the solar and it's very, very cheap. But I have some lovely teenagers who like to have long showers at about 8 or 9 o'clock at night and deplete that hot water. Now, if I come home from a run at 6 a.m, I want a hot shower, otherwise there's a really grumpy mum in the house. So I set my heat pump at the moment to heat during the day and then to have another boost at night time. So it's really important to know that you can program these things based on your lifestyle and have hot water whenever you need it.
Great. I'm just going to stay with you, Sophie, just for this last couple of questions, and then we're getting close to close. But a couple together here. It's, can we convert ducted gas heating to ducted electric heating? And also, what's the best way to block off gas ducts?
Yeah, some good questions. So unfortunately, the ducts are a different size, so you can't use the same ductwork for when you're converting to an electric system that you've used in that gas system. A lot of the time you can use the same vents, though, in terms of the locations, whether they be underfloor or in your roof. So it does need a new system, and it does need new ductwork in there when you're replacing to an electric system. To seal off the old ducts if you're not using them, get in some trays to do that. Make sure it's insulated underneath and covered up so that there's no draft and there's no airflow through there, and you're not losing heat when that is not being used anymore. But it's not an overwhelming process. The installer should be helping you and guiding you in terms of what you need to do in the ducts that you can use and what will be redundant and you need to repair.
Can I ask a question? Do you think hydronic heating is getting more popular as people move to heat pump systems and think of whole house systems, particularly new builds?
It's an interesting one. A lot of people love the feel of hydronic heat, and I see it in a lot of
older
older
luxury.
homes. Yeah, in a lot of older homes. I think a lot of people are really thinking about the future costs of a home, though, and that space heating and using the split systems is really changing that whole landscape. And certainly that's the real push that I'm seeing in the market, is moving to those split systems.
Okay, so as we come close to time, I'm just going to ask each of you the same question and get your response. But if you can pick one thing for people to walk away with today, what would that be? Dan, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. That we're in really an incredible revolution that Australia can lead the world in. Electrification, already 3.8 million or whatever households have rooftop solar, and this will save households money, and I think will lead to more ambition and optimism about climate action generally across the community and across industries. So I think electrification is really the sort of, the gateway to Australia really cleaning up its act and sharing the benefits of that cleaner new economy across the community. So I think it's an incredibly powerful step people can take in their lives that has ripples all through the community.
That's great. And Sophie?
It's interesting, in a short space of time that we've really gained momentum in this space, and it's really, really exciting. But I think on a household level, it's realising that this is a journey and that you don't need to do everything all at once. Start small and move through that process. It may be that you end up moving home, you know, your situation might change. Plan and treat that as a journey so that you don't think that you have to do everything all at once, and then it will seem like a much more manageable process.
I'm going to be a bit cheeky. I've got two, but they're very closely related. The first is just get to know your own energy usage patterns and your energy bill. That was a great call out by Sophie. And the second is, if you've already started this journey, take the next step. You don't need to take all of them, but take the next step. And if you haven't started, take the first step. And it could be installing a door, it could be buying a snake draft proofer, or it could be buying and installing a heat pump hot water system. Take that first step, keep moving, because we all need to keep moving at pace to deliver what will hopefully be an electrification nation. Thank you. I might, with that, Tess, we're at time, so I'm going to wrap us up and just formally thank everyone who contributed to this information session tonight. I'd like to thank the Minister D'Ambrosio, to Dan, to Sophie for generously giving up their time tonight, Tess for putting the event together and moderating your Q&As, and Terry Teo, who took us on a tour of his home. But a big thanks to all of you who tuned in. We know you're all busy, have very busy lives, and we've asked an hour out of your days. Thank you for generously giving that hour of attention. We hope it was worth it and you took something useful from it. We'd really love your feedback on the sessions, so if you can spare a couple of minutes and just take a moment to scan the QR code that appears on your screen now, that will take you to a very quick, I promise, questionnaire. It will help us improve the next information sessions that we're running, and we will keep running them. We've got more information sessions to run. The next will be on that digital tool that I've talked to you about, the SEC Electric Home Planner, which will take the guesswork out of switching. And then following that session, we plan to do some deep dives on topics like solar, heating and cooling, and hot water heat pumps. So there's plenty more to come. Visit our website to register for that session. That's secvictoria.com.au. And we'll also send you details via the emails that you registered with. There's a whole lot of information we've tried to pull together on our website, including information about rebates, which I know is a topic that has come up and a question that's come up quite often through the Q&As tonight. So again, if you click on the Households tab under secvictoria.com.au, that'll pull up a whole lot of information about rebates, including the many rebates and grants that are being offered by our colleagues at Solar Victoria. So that's all presented in one place for you there. Solar Victoria also have a great website. It's www.solar.vic.gov.au. So go to one of those two websites and you'll get some great, simple, trustworthy information. With that, I'll close and just say that we look forward to working with households, the true climate and energy heroes of this transition, to accelerate Victoria's transition to renewables. Thanks, everyone.